December 1944. In the West, it seemed the war was drawing to a close. The Allies had liberated France after landing in Normandy, crossed the German border, and expected to end the campaign by the spring of 1945. But this sense of victory concealed a dangerous mistake, an underestimation of the enemy. Hitler, realizing that the Eastern Front was collapsing, decided to launch a final, desperate strike in the West. His goal was to split the Allied forces, push them back to the Atlantic, and force the United States and Britain to negotiate peace. He chose a location familiar from World War I, the dense forests of the Ardennes. The terrain was considered impassable for large armies, which is why the American command kept less experienced and tired units there. The German command prepared Operation Wacht am Rhein in the strictest secrecy. The Germans were gathering tank divisions, ammunition, and fuel, hiding their vehicles in dense forests, moving them only at night. American intelligence reports underestimated the enemy's concentration, believing that Germany was incapable of a major offensive. Leading US and British generals were confident that the enemy was exhausted and broken. Meanwhile, American units, young soldiers and units sent back to rest after heavy fighting, were stationed in the Ardennes forests. Many considered this section of the front quiet. At night, only occasional artillery fire was heard, and patrols reported, the enemy is almost invisible. It was precisely this confidence that played into Germany's hands. The enemy was preparing the largest tank offensive since Kursk. More than 200,000 German soldiers, thousands of guns, and hundreds of tanks, including the legendary Tigers and Panthers, were concentrated for a strike that would change the course of the war. The morning of December 16, 1944, was a shock. German artillery unleashed a barrage of fire on American positions. Communications were disrupted, and roads quickly descended into chaos. The enemy attacked along the entire length of the Ardennes forest, seeking to break through to the vital port of Antwerp. The American units, caught in the attack, were caught completely by surprise. Many soldiers were experiencing major combat for the first time. Radio operators shouted over the airwaves, "We are under attack. The Germans are everywhere." Commanders tried to figure out, was this a localized attack or the beginning of something much larger? It would soon become clear, this was more than just a localized offensive. This was Hitler's final stand, a strike with all the remaining might of the Third Reich. And it was in these first hours that the fate of one of the most brutal battles of World War II, the Battle of the Bulge, was decided. The morning of December 16, 1944, brought chaos the likes of which American troops had never seen on the Western Front. German artillery rained down heavy fire on forward positions, disrupting communication lines and creating corridors for tanks. The momentary silence of the quiet front gave way to the roar of the advance. The American units under attack spent the first hours trying to comprehend the scale of the attack. Commanders believed it was a localized operation, but it soon became clear, German forces were advancing along the entire front. Telephones were silent, lines had been cut. Radio operators exchanged short, alarming messages, "We are losing ground, the enemy is breaking through." German tank divisions, moving along narrow forest roads, drove deep into the American defenses. For the first time since the beginning of the Normandy operation, the United States encountered so many German tanks. Poorly prepared areas, weak fortifications, and the inexperience of some units played against them. The situation became especially dire in the Losheim Gap and Elsenborn Ridge areas. Some American companies simply swept aside the massive attacks. The infantry retreated, breaking off the battle to avoid encirclement. However, even in the first hours, pockets of fierce resistance emerged. Individual platoons and companies held out to their last bullet, delaying the German advance. One of the key episodes was the capture of the town of Saint-Vith. The Germans hoped to take it quickly, but American units, although retreating, managed to organize a defense, buying precious hours for the Allies to regroup. However, a breakthrough did occur. The Germans began to form a huge salient, the Ardennes Sack, stretching for tens of kilometers. Wehrmacht columns penetrated deep into the Allied lines, striving to advance to the Meuse and further to Antwerp, a strategic port. American columns in the rear were turning into a chaotic stream, trucks, ambulances, retreating units. The snow-covered roads were clogged with vehicles. However, amidst this chaos, a surprising degree of resilience emerged. Many officers set up emergency defensive positions right on the highways, deployed machine guns at intersections, and organized points of resistance. The weather was on Germany's side. Fog and low clouds hindered Allied air power, allowing German tanks to advance almost without airstrikes. It was precisely this poor weather that gave the Wehrmacht a chance to succeed. But the Americans quickly adapted. Generals and commanders assessed the situation and redeployed tank divisions from reserves. Morale also shifted, from confusion to determination to hold every road, every bridge, every intersection. Thus, within the first 2 days, it became clear that although the Germans had managed to create a huge salient, the American line had not collapsed. A protracted and bloody struggle began, in which the small garrisons that held key positions would play a crucial role. And it was here, in the Ardennes, that American troops found themselves on the brink for the first time in a long time, but they proved they were capable of withstanding a blow. As German troops advanced deeper into the Ardennes, the small Belgian town of Bastogne became one of the main centers of resistance. It was a strategic crossroads of 7 roads, and its control allowed for troop movements throughout the region. The Germans understood that taking Bastogne would open the way to the Meuse. The Americans knew that losing the town could lead to the collapse of the defense. The U.S. 101st Airborne Division, the famous Screaming Eagles, was sent to Bastogne. The division arrived in the town in haste, with virtually no winter clothing and limited ammunition. Elements of a tank division and artillery arrived with them. The soldiers dug positions in the frozen ground, deployed anti-tank guns, and prepared for a perimeter defense. By December 20th, German forces had completely surrounded Bastogne. The Americans found themselves completely encircled, without sufficient supplies and no chance of retreat. The cold intensified, and supplies became critical. Soldiers burned any wooden objects to keep warm. Every bullet was considered precious. When German envoys delivered their surrender demands to the Americans, the defense commander, General Anthony McAuliffe, became famous for his short and brazen reply, "Nuts. Nonsense." This reply quickly became a symbol of the steadfastness of Bastogne's defense. Meanwhile, General George Patton, commander of the Third Army, conducted rapid maneuvers to relieve the encircled city. He made one of the most impressive operational decisions of the war. He turned his corps 90 degrees in the winter chaos and sent them north, directly into the center of the German offensive. This operation required incredible coordination. Patton's tank and infantry units moved along slippery roads, overcame snowdrifts, and negotiated enemy defensive lines. By Christmas, the Americans were engaged in heavy fighting on the approaches to Bastogne, trying to break through the German units, who were defending their positions with all their might, recognizing the city's importance. Meanwhile, the situation in Bastogne itself was deteriorating. Ammunition was running low, the wounded were mounting, and the weather prevented airstrikes. But every day of the defense disrupted the German plans. Their tank divisions were increasingly delayed, ammunition was running low, and fuel was running low. On December 26, 1944, the tanks of the Third Army finally broke through the encirclement. The soldiers of the 101st Division met them exhausted but unbroken. Bastogne stood firm, and its defense became a key moment in the battle. By disrupting Germany's plans for a rapid advance, the Americans gained time to regroup the entire Allied army. And now the phase was beginning in which the United States would move to counterattacks, gradually squeezing the Ardennes salient and forcing the enemy to retreat. After breaking through the Bastogne encirclement, the German offensive began to lose momentum. Wehrmacht tanks were increasingly short of fuel, ammunition was running low, and the weather gradually improved, opening the skies to Allied air power. Inspired by Patton's breakthrough, American forces quickly shifted from defense to counteroffensive. The improved weather played a significant role. US and British aircraft began launching massive strikes against enemy columns, destroying bridges, destroying tanks, and impeding the movement of German vehicles along the narrow roads of the Ardennes. The same roads that had helped the Germans hide in the fog in the early days now turned into death traps. American forces were squeezing the Ardennes salient from two sides. Patton's armies were advancing from the south, while the forces holding the lines at Elsenborn Ridge were advancing from the north. German forces were increasingly forced to abandon their vehicles on the roads due to fuel shortages or damage. Fierce fighting continued for every village, bridge, and hill. The Germans attacked with their last strength, trying to hold key positions. But they had already lost the initiative. The Allies were regaining momentum, acting with increasing confidence. American Sherman tanks, although inferior to the Tigers and Panthers, prevailed through numbers, maneuverability, and air support. One of the final episodes was the battle near the town of Houffalize, where German units attempted to conduct an organized retreat. However, the Americans pursued them, attacking their columns and hindering their retreat. The German forces' effectiveness was rapidly declining, tanks were few, the infantry was exhausted, and morale was falling. The Allies gradually closed the circle around the remaining German units. In many areas, German soldiers surrendered in groups, realizing there was nowhere left to break through. Isolated pockets of resistance remained, but they were no longer able to change the overall picture. By mid-January 1945, the Ardennes salient had been completely eliminated. The United States and its allies had recaptured all lost territory and advanced further east, approaching Germany's borders. The failure in the Ardennes was catastrophic for the Third Reich. Germany lost tens of thousands of soldiers, hundreds of tanks, and a significant portion of its remaining reserves. This battle became Hitler's last major attempt to change the course of the war in the West. The failure of the offensive completely destroyed Germany's strategic capabilities. After the defeat in the Ardennes, the Wehrmacht was left with no strength to stop the Allied advance. Within a few months, American troops, along with other allies, would enter Germany and end the war in Europe. The Battle of the Bulge became a test for the American army, a test of courage, fortitude, and the ability to operate in conditions of chaos and surprise. But it also became a symbol of how determination, coordination, and the ability to adapt can break even a powerful enemy attack. In the Ardennes, the United States not only held out, but also proved that they were capable of turning the tide and achieving victory.